Hello all, and welcome to Explained with Dylan. Today I'm going to talk about the place in the United States where you can technically commit any crime, including murder, whatever other crimes you might want to be committing here. I can't think of any off the top of my head except for murder for some reason, but any crime you would wish to do. This video is a lot of explaining, so it's a good thing that I am Explained with Dylan. In the United States, if you commit a crime, you can be prosecuted in one of two ways. Either federally or by the state. Yellowstone National Park is only under federal law. There is no way you can be prosecuted by the state. You can commit any crime there, and it will automatically go to federal law. Now, there's something important you need to know about Yellowstone National Park. The vast majority of it is in Wyoming, but there is a small portion in both Idaho and Montana. So back to the explanation. If you are to be prosecuted federally, then the country split itself into 94 federal districts, which do not cross state lines. Why'd they do that? I don't know exactly. Just to make things simpler overall to decide who the jury is going to be. I'll get back to that in a moment. But there's one exception to federal districts. The federal district of Wyoming actually crosses through the remainder of Yellowstone National Park, which means the federal district of Wyoming actually crosses into both Montana and Idaho. Which means that if you commit a crime in the Idaho portion of Yellowstone National Park, the jury needs to be made up of people that live in both Idaho and the federal district of Wyoming, which, once again, is only in Yellowstone National Park. Slight issue. No one lives in the Idaho portion of National Park, which means that if you commit a crime there, it is impossible to pull together a jury, which means there can't be a trial, which means you can't be convicted of any crime. In Montana, that is not the case, because even though it needs to be the federal district and state, there are actually people that live in the Yellowstone Park in Montana, which means you can still be convicted there. But if you go to Idaho in the zone of death, then, nope. But if you go to Idaho in the zone of death, it is called that because you can commit murder there, like I said in the intro, then you can technically get away with any crime. Now, there's a slight problem, which would be an issue for you if you were looking to commit murder in the Yellowstone Zone of Death in Idaho. You see, you can't commit the entire crime in one state because no one lives in that state. You don't clearly live in that state, which means you could be plotting murder in another state. You could be possessing a weapon you're not supposed to possess in another state. There are plenty of things. You could be kidnapping in another state. So even if the crime that's the worst, if the murder takes place in the Yellowstone Zone of Death, then something else is bound to take place in another state residing in a proper federal district, which means you can still be committed, which means you can still be convicted of a crime. Although not as much of a serious crime, which means you may get less of a sentence than you would if you were convicted of murder, but you would still go to jail in all probability. There's another problem. You see, judges don't technically need to follow all the rules. Sure, the Sixth Amendment says, hey, you have to have a jury made up of people from the state and federal district, but the judge doesn't necessarily have to follow that. Then, of course, the defendant can appeal that and go to another court, but they're not necessarily going to go through all the more work of appealing it. So the judge can technically just say, sure, it says that, but we don't want to let this guy go for murder, so we're going to find people that live in Idaho and bring them in, even if they don't technically live in the federal district. Or they could bring people that live in Wyoming, which do live in the federal district, just not the state. Either way, you're unlikely to be able to get away entirely with a crime, but it's tough to say for sure because no one has actually tried to murder someone there, which surprises me given all the things that have happened, all the ways people have tried to murder people here, and no one has thought of just bringing them to Idaho. That would be such a lovely vacation to murder someone on. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I will see you in a week.